Welcome to the Bible Department PodClass from Whitefield Academy, a Christ-centered college preparatory school serving pre-K through 12th grade in Atlanta, Georgia. Join us for an inside look at the vibrant, engaging, and transformative biblical teaching shaping our students every single day, straight from the dynamic teachers who bring it to life. In this episode, Grade 5 Bible teacher Jake Feigl walks us through the story of Abraham, exploring the priestly calling of God's people, the significance of Melchizedek, and the foreshadowing of Christ in the offering of Isaac. So sit back, take a listen, and enjoy. Bible class is now in session.
Good afternoon. My name is Jake Feigl. I am the 5th grade Bible teacher at the Whitefield Academy, and I'm going to share a little bit of information about Father Abraham, the progenitor of our royal priesthood in Jesus Christ. The Bible tells a story that involves priests. These are men that mediate between our material world and the invisible realm of God. Jesus holds 3 chief offices: prophet, priest, and king. And he's called our high priest forever. He is the ultimate priest, meaning the final one. No further mediation is needed between man and God. The work that those Old Testament priests performed then would now today be completely redundant. Since Christ's resurrection, the elect have an eternal high priest who continually intercedes for them. And so this is an unthinkably blessed position for the hopeless sinner to find himself in. And in that way, our understanding of the priesthood sits at the core of the gospel message. So this story begins with God creating a garden called Eden, and in Eden, heaven and earth are one, and God places humans in this garden to be his royal image, his priests, so that humans and God can work together as one. He creates out of nothing, by the power of his word, a new physical reality. Now you can imagine the angels, the awe of the angels who have known only spiritual things and are now witnessing this genesis of a new class of reality. It's a physical realm which is crowned by the animation of these new agents, Adam and Eve. These are creatures who actually uniquely bear the image of the Creator himself. This whole setup is called God's blessing. Now, tragically, the priestly humans are duped by a deceiver into rebelling against God and are then exiled from the garden. God nevertheless promises that one day a descendant will come to defeat that evil deceiver and restore humanity as royal priests again. God initiates and he administers a covenant in blood, and he promises this childless Abraham that he will be blessed with a family as numerous as the stars in the sky, calling him to an adventure to a foreign land. Now, the blessing is not just for Abraham. The goal is that God's blessing flows through this family out to all the nations. Additionally, that makes Abraham's family like a priesthood. So does that mean that Abraham is the royal priest that we've been looking for? Well, no. Abraham does meet a mysterious figure, however, who reminds us of that promised royal priest. Abraham, while returning victorious from a risky battle, passes by the city of Shalem, and this king comes out to meet him. We're told that this king is also a priest who serves the same God that Abraham does. The king's name is Melchizedek, and we're not given a reason why he worships Abraham's God, and his family heritage is unknown, but something interesting happens. Melchizedek orders this great feast brought out to Abraham and his army, and then he gives God's blessing to Abraham, saying God is the one who gave him this victory over his enemies. And then Abraham gives Melchizedek 1/10 of everything that he has, and that's the story. And so Melchizedek is the king and the priest of Shalem, which is an ancient name that is short for Jerusalem, which will later become the capital of Abraham's future family where the temple is built. All right, that's 10% that Abraham gives to Melchizedek. That's just like 10% that Israelites will later give to honor the priests who work in the temple. And so here we have Abraham, the father of the Israelites, and he's honoring a royal priesthood that existed long before Israel's temple or their priests. Now, Abraham and his wife Sarah are both very aged, and she has been perpetually barren. And so God's injunction that Abraham will have a family is weighing very heavy on him. So Abraham does what was somewhat common in this day, and he sires a son with his wife's handservant Hagar. Now, this plan was initiated by Sarah. However, she finds herself afterward overcome with resentment for both Hagar and her son Ishmael, and they're banished from the household. Sarah, of course, later gives birth to Isaac at age 90 and Abraham at age 100. And God does something peculiar next in the story, it would seem. He instructs Abraham to offer the life of that boy Isaac to him. Now, while we commonly rationalize this contradictory injunction as a mere test of Abraham's faith, severe though it may be, there is, in fact, more to the story that's not readily discernible from the text alone. First, remember that from the time that the Lord speaks to Noah until he speaks to Abraham, 10 generations passed, about 300 years. And so the Lord, in a sense, introducing himself to humanity by way of Abraham, making his acquaintance in many new and personal ways. He's promising an eternal legacy. In doing this, God is distinguishing himself from the false gods. So the first thing to know is that God is going to distinguish himself. And the second important thing to know about the offering of Isaac is precisely how God will distinguish himself. The nature of religion of that age is such that the gods of the ancient Near East, that's Baal and Molech and Asherah and others, these gods considered a human sacrifice to be the highest order of offering, and a child the pinnacle. Abraham was, in fact, well acquainted with this convention of child sacrifice, having traveled extensively among these pagan kingdoms and these cultures, living among them. This is how gods were worshipped in Abraham's generation. And so God's command to Abraham to present him with this highest order offering, it would not be as unthinkable as it sounds to us today, again, in spite of its contradictory nature. Remember, God's previous promise in the first place to provide him this miracle child in his very old age. So child sacrifice, this is a very familiar thing to Abraham and to all people of that region of that day. So this is something that is done. Now, what's more for Abraham is that this will be a severe personal challenge to what is likely Abraham's greatest temptation, the idolatry of this miracle child himself. You think about how much pining in vain for a son that Abraham would have endured up to age 100. And then after miraculously receiving him in birth, to then be forced to exchange him in death in devotion to God, that would be a very, very bitter pill for him to accept. This is a temptation for Abraham to protect Isaac at all costs. God tells us and all men that we must break all such people and things that would be idols to us in our own lives in the service of true devotion to him alone. So the offering of Isaac is precisely where God distinguishes himself from the false gods of man. And seeing Abraham's obedience and devotion in this offering, the Lord, Yahweh, declares that child sacrifice, in fact, will never be required of him or of any man. And children are, conversely, an unmitigated blessing. They are a heritage unto God. And that is very good news for Abraham and for us and for all the saints. And that is, of course, in keeping with the creation mandate to be fruitful and to multiply and to fill the earth. Now, after all this, the perennial question remains, how can sinners be justified before a holy God? And what is the place of the priest? What will satisfy God's divine justice and his righteous wrath against wickedness and against sin? The answer is when Isaac asks his dad up on top of Mount Moriah in Genesis 22, Isaac said to his father, "My father, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" And Abraham replied, "God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son." Which is what he does in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. The Father himself provides a lamb for the offering, and he spares him not for the remission of sins of mankind. Abraham calls this location on Mount Moriah, he calls it, "The Lord will provide." Genesis 22:14 says, "It is said to this day, on the mount of the Lord it shall be provided." This is the precise location that Solomon's temple will be built upon. It's the highest point in the city of Jerusalem that will be 1,200 years in the future. The temple is built on the site of the offering of Isaac on the mountain of Yahweh, holy Mount Zion, Jerusalem, of which Melchizedek was the ancient priest and king. And so both of these stories of Abraham with Melchizedek and Abraham with Isaac point forward to the need of a future royal priest who will also become a sacrifice. This is King Jesus himself. He's a type of Melchizedek as high priest, and as well, he is a type of Isaac as a would-be sacrifice. Jesus Christ is sacrifice once for all the elect and is high priest, eternally interceding on their behalf, even now and forevermore. And that is what Father Abraham, the progenitor of our faith and our priesthood, is all about. I am Jake Feigl. I teach Bible in the 5th grade, and this is some of what we discussed during our early part of the school year in the 5th grade as we're introduced to this chapter in redemptive history where God is revealing himself through covenants made with mankind that he's going to save a people and keep a people for himself. Thanks for listening.